Your tale, or rather the tale you have shared, has entertained unceasingly even to this very moment. I have invested such a meager bit of my power in you, yet profited so greatly from it.
Before the video starts, I would like to thank a few people for helping me gather all of the scans, feats, and statements for my Xeno Goku scaling that I'll be using in today's video. Huge shout out and thanks to Don Boss and Odin Oni, you guys know who you are. They don't have YouTube channels, but I greatly appreciate them for helping me with this. And thank you to the Rogue guy for providing translations for some of the scans in the video as well. His link will be down below in the description. And thank you to Numbers for also helping me with the scans and the scaling for Xeno Goku. I'll also have his YouTube channel link down below. And with all of that being said, let's get on with the video. In my video about Goku versus Featherine that I posted about 3 months ago, there were many people that were upset about me saying that Goku loses and that Featherine would completely destroy him. And in today's video, I wanted to go over Xeno Goku versus Featherine and see if this non-canon iteration of Goku actually has what it takes to defeat her. Before the video starts, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoy my content, and it would help me and the channel out a lot. And with that being said, let's get started with Xeno Goku scaling. First is Universe 7's cosmology, and the first thing to talk about is its living universe, or the temporal realm, at least from how the anime describes it. This realm is stated to be infinite and is also ever expanding, and is said to have innumerable stars and galaxies that are composed of innumerable nebulae. There's also the demon realm, which although it isn't within the living realm itself, it is stated to be the opposite of the living realm in the sense that it is said to be like two sides of the same coin, which should mean that it also has its own macrocosm within it, and the fact that it doesn't exist anywhere else like in Otherworld or other higher realms, it would make sense for it to be connected to the living realm, and this would end up making the living realm 4D. Next, there's Otherworld, and this entire realm is stated to be dimensionally transcendent to the living realm, and that those in the lower realm cannot perceive this place. And there's also the Kaioshin realm, which exists directly outside of the macrocosm and is 1/10 the size of it. This would make Otherworld 5D and the Kaioshin realm 6D. Next is the neutral space, and this is the space that houses all 12 universes within it. So because it not only holds Universe 7 and its macrocosm, but also holds the 11 other universes that should also have their own macrocosm, then this would surpass Universe 7 as a whole and would make the neutral space 7D. Then there's the entire temporal space, and this is the space that surpasses even the neutral space and is beyond all 12 macrocosms. There is a possibility that the World of Void or Zeno's Palace could exist within this space, as we see what can arguably be the different universes as orbs around Zeno's Palace, but it's currently unconfirmed if this is the case. This would make the entire temporal space 8D. Next is the white space, and this is the space that we see Zeno in after he erases Future Trunks' timeline. We see many different timelines all throughout this space, which would make it higher than even the entire temporal space and would therefore make it 9D. Now onto the heroes in Xenoverse cosmology, where things like the Time Nest, Parallel Quest, and the Tokipedia all exist, starting with the Time Nest. This place is where all of Dragon Ball's main timeline is housed in the Book of Beginning and End, and where the Scroll of Time are housed that have every and any alteration in Dragon Ball's many different timelines and histories. These histories are not only infinite, but are also ever expanding, as slight alterations can create new branching histories. This is why Fuse says to Dabura that he wants to explore all possibilities, with this statement being made in Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2's DLC campaign titled Infinite History, meaning that those histories are already present and are ever expanding as time goes on. Dragon Ball having infinite timelines and histories is also consistent, with even games saying that the number of worlds are infinite. The Time Nest housing all of this is very impressive, but not as impressive as the Parallel Quests, which are their own separate and unique histories that aren't connected to not only the main timeline, but even the ones contained within the Time Nest. Time Patrollers state that just like the histories connected to the Time Nest, the ones in the Parallel Quest are also infinite and ever expanding, so much so that just trying to figure out which is the true history is pretty much impossible. And these histories are not contained by the Time Nest, but by the world of Toki Toki itself, which is a world where all of time converges. Each Parallel Quest is also essentially its own multiverse that has its own Time Nest with its own set of individual infinite timelines, etc, etc. The Tokipedia is the same in the fact that there are also an infinite amount of timelines within it as well, and these histories are also their own separate multiverse multiverses that have been tampered with by few, who was able to recreate the Book of Beginning and End, with all of this making the cosmology 10D. Next is the Crack of Time, and this place exists outside of time itself and cannot be accessed or tampered with through any conventional means. Even things like the Time Nest, Parallel Quest, and the Tokipedia are below this space, which would make the Crack of Time 11D. Next is the Subspace or Teleportation Zone, and this is the space that Goku enters when using instant transmission. This space has been stated to not have the concept of time within it and is said to blatantly be above time itself. This space is also not connected to any of the realms and is pretty much its own thing. So because of this space not having the concept of time within it and also being above it, then this would be placed somewhere around the Crack of Time in terms of dimensionality and would make this space around 11D as well. Or you can say that this space is actually 12D, but it really is up to interpretation. Next is the blank page, and this is the page that we see Dragon Ball media itself drawn on, so this would be 12D. Next is Beats World, and this is the fictional real world in Super Dragon Ball Heroes, and everything Dragon Ball related is viewed as fiction, and all of the realms and things I've mentioned so far would exist below this place, so this would be 13D. Next there's Charisma World, and this is the world where Heroes players view Beats World as fiction and would again be above everything I've mentioned so far, so this would be 14D. Then there's the actual real world, or our world, and since this would surpass even Charisma World as it is viewed as fiction and it surpasses everything in any related Dragon Ball media, then this would be 15D and be around Outerversal. So just in terms of dimensionality, Xenogoku can be argued to be 15D or Outerversal, but there are some questions I could see you all asking and I'll explain them. One of them is, how does Xenogoku scale to the actual real world? Well, that's because in a certain promotional material for Super Dragon Ball Heroes, there were villains from the series and games that invaded Japan and were causing mass destruction, in which Xenogoku would either scale to or above. There are arguments that this Japan exists within Beats World, with Raditz awakening within Tokyo Shibuya, and that the heroes or the player avatars are needed to step in and stop the invasion, similar to how Beat can use his avatar to interact with the DBH arcade game. But there's also arguments that this Japan exists outside of even Beats World, with this Japan being called the quote-unquote real world, and that it is its own universe and is separate from the rest of the Dragon Ball Heroes arcade, with further details saying that Baby has launched a full-scale invasion on Japan, and more information saying things like, and I quote, "Saiyans are in reality, Saiyans are in the real world, question mark," end quote. Depending on how you interpret this, the event could have taken place in a universe that's even above Beats World and not connected to the Dragon Ball Heroes cosmology, or this did take place within his world or cosmology, since we, the actual people, couldn't interact with these characters without the avatars, just like Beat does. Even though we've talked about the cosmology, we still haven't talked about some of Xenogoku's feats, so let's get into that. One of the first things I'd like to talk about is the events he has gone through, as this is important in figuring out a general gauge of his capabilities. We know that he has went through all of original Dragon Ball and its movies, and he's also gone through all of Dragon Ball Z and its movies as well. The only movie he hasn't gone through is the Super Android 13 one, as that's the timeline where Krillin used the remote to destroy the androids, so it wouldn't apply to him. One of the first feats I'd like to talk about come from the first DBZ movie, Dead Zone, and in this movie, the villain Garlic Jr. can open a portal to a space called the Dead Zone, and this space is said to be a hyperspace, and those who enter will have both their body and soul frozen with no escape. Now, there are contentions on if this is actually a hyperspace, with many citing this as inconsistent or not viable. However, if you want to take Koyama's opinions on the movies into consideration, or the Daizenshu, which also calls it a hyperspace, then you could use this to say that it would be 4D, and Xenogoku clearly scales above this. Then in the fourth movie, named Lord Slug, Goku is able to utilize Kaioken times 100, which, if you didn't know, is absolutely insane given how much of a multiplier this is for Xenogoku. You could maybe argue that he could potentially use this in conjunction with his other forms, but because we haven't seen him do this, then this could be unlikely. And in movie 5, Cooler's Revenge, in the Toei Anime Fair July 1991 pamphlet, Cooler was stated to have immeasurable superpower in his final form, and in the 6th movie called Cooler's Revenge, Goku was able to move move around inside of the subspace or teleportation zone of instant transmission while battling against Metal Cooler. And as I said, this space is not only above time itself, but it's also said that the very concept of time does not exist here. Then in movie 8, when Goku fought Broly, he had gained energy from the Z Fighters and was said in the Toei Anime Fair March 1993 pamphlet to have had his ki increased by 1,000 times. And in movie 9, BoJack Unbound, BoJack was stated to have transcendent power. This is also the same thing that was said for Super Gogeta in the Fusion Reborn movie, and is also said for Hirudegarn in movie 13, Wrath of the Dragon. And Xenogoku scales above all of this. He also scales above Demigra, who was threatening to destroy the Time Nest, which contains all of Dragon Ball's history, and even the world of Toki Toki, which houses that, and the Parallel Quest, which are their own separate infinite multiverse. And he scales above a stronger version of Demigra, who was going to destroy both the world of Dragon Ball Heroes and Beats world, which is transcended to Dragon Ball Heroes, and views it as fiction. This would also include Toki Toki, with Demigra also being said to be beyond space and time. Then there's Mira, who he also scales to, who was stated to also transcend time. One character I'd like to go over though is Eos. Eos was the former Supreme Kai of Time and is very powerful, being able to outpace and give a post-Tournament of Power Capsule Corp Goku a challenge, with hearts of previous antagonists in Super Dragon Ball Heroes, denoting Eos as just God, and with her unique abilities like having precognition and being able to freeze not only time but people's consciousnesses too. And Capsule Corp Goku is able to adapt to her pretty quickly while only using Ultra Instinct Sign and not even the mastered version. And we see Xenogoku fight against this Goku after his battle with Eos, and they were pretty much equal until their last clash, with Capsule Corp Goku's mastered Ultra Instinct one-shotting Xenogoku in his Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4 form. So this would upscale Xenogoku from the previously mentioned feats. But that's all of Xenogoku's AP feats out of the way, so now let's go over his speed. You can scale Xenogoku to infinite speed all the way up to irrelevant speed if you believe him to be in any outerversal tier of power. For infinite speed, you can scale him to traveling through the demon realm, which is said to be two sides of the same coin to the living realm, with it being stated to be both infinite and ever expanding in size. And we see Xenogoku travel throughout this realm very casually. You can also scale him to infinite speed by using Capsule Corp Goku's feat of flying to the Grand Priest's temple, which arguably exists in a space that is beyond all 12 macrocosms, with the promotional anime statement stating that he actually flew there and didn't just teleport. Next, there's immeasurable speed, and you could group this up with inaccessible speed depending on how you interpret the feats and statements, but you could get him here with movie Goku's feat of traveling and fighting Metal Cooler in the subspace, which is stated to not have the concept of time within it and also surpasses the concept entirely. Or you could use things like the Dark Dragon Balls physically traveling to different eras and timelines, which various statements seem to support, or Dark Broly flying from hell in an entirely different era all the way to the demon realm, which exists in two completely separate parts of the macrocosm. And in the Xenoverse 1 game, Goku uses instant transmission to teleport to the crack of time, which exists beyond Dragon Ball's cosmology, which is insane by the way. And with his speed covered, let's go over his hacks and abilities next. To begin, Xenogoku has access to every form of Super Saiyan, starting from Super Saiyan 1 all the way up to Super Saiyan 4 Limit Breaker. He does not have access to Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Blue, or any variation of Ultra Instinct, with Super Saiyan being a 50 times multiplier, 2 being 100 times base, and 3 being 400 times base, and 4 and Limit Breaker being comparable in amps to the likes of Super Saiyan Blue and possibly Ultra Instinct. Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4 has been stated to be power that surpasses Goku's limits, meaning that he can continuously break his limits and gain more power while in this state. This transformation is also so powerful that it lets him fight on par with CC Goku. He can also use the Kaioken, which ignites his ki and increases all of his stats with explosive power. And Xenogoku also has access to the Ki Sword, which can do many things like bypass and negate regeneration and immortality, and can make Goku immune to time-based hacks and abilities. But what we really need to dive into are the abilities he can use in the arcade game. I won't go through all of his arcade abilities as this video would be way too long, but I'll go over the important ones that I think could be discussed in this matchup. First is Dimensional Domain, and this ability allows Xenogoku to reduce the stamina of his opponent down to 1. Next is Shinryu Hero's Wish, and this ability lets Goku ask Shinryu to recover his strength and stamina during during a battle. Then there's Super Warrior Freeze Attack, and this ability stops the opponent from attacking while also damaging them and lowering their energy by a substantial amount. Next is Steel Body, and this ability essentially increases Goku's durability in proportion to the enemy's increased attack power. And then there's the Zeno Orb, and this increases the chance of a Miracle Perfect, and what that is basically increasing the probability of actions that Xenogoku does. And that's all of Xenogoku's scaling covered, so now I'll go over Featherine and see how she scales in comparison. Now in my Super Goku vs Featherine video, I went into a lot of detail regarding Yumineko's cosmology, and to keep the video from getting too long, if you would like to see my more in-depth thoughts and reasoning about the cosmology, then please check out that video. As for this video, I'll quickly go over most of the things I mentioned before, while also adding in new info that I didn't talk about. So anyways, to begin, there's the human domain, which is the lowest layer of reality in Yumineko. The bottommost layer of reality is 3D, as it's pretty much a representation of our regular world where it follows scientific theories and is where humans reside. Then there's the 4D layer, which you could argue to be Rokenjima when Beatrice made it into her cat box. Next is the 5D layer, which would be above the 4D layer. Then there's the 6D layer, and this layer is the higher narrative dimension where we see Beatrice not physically interacting with the chess piece of Battler. Then there's the 7D layer, which is the magic world, and this world is a meta-narrative space and would be above the previous one since it is said to be a parallel world to the human world and is compared to that of a meta-like space. Next is the 8D layer, which is the underside of the game board, and this layer is considered an upper world to the previous layers and is said to exist between the human world and the witch domain, and it's also said to exist nowhere in the world and at no time in the world, along with everything leading here while nothing could be reached from here, and all times connected to this place but no time exists here. Now we get into the witch domain, with the next layer being 9D, and this is the meta room. This is the room where the higher plane beings play their games and where they see everyone and everything in the human world as chess pieces on a chessboard. Next is the 10D layer, and this is a layer that exists directly over the normal layer and where we see a lower version of Battler and Beto interact. It's also considered a higher narrative layer compared to the previous one. Next is the 11D layer, and this is Maria's and Beatrice's Golden Land, which exists outside of and parallel to the game board. Then there's the 12D layer, which is the Sea of Fragments connected to Beatrice's cat box. This is basically the realm in which all of Beatrice's worlds exist upon. Then there's the 13D layer, and this would be the Game Master's existence, because Battler was able to figure out the entire truth of Beatrice's game, along with the fact that the existence and power of a meta being is derived from their imagination. He was able to ascend to a Game Master and is able to make his own game boards and manipulate his own pieces at will, which would put him higher than all of the previously mentioned layers. Then the 14D layer, which is Berncastle's chapel, and this exists in a cat box that is much larger than Beatrice's and covers the whole thing. Then there's the 15D layer, which is the Sea of Fragments of Berncastle's cat box, and just like Beatrice's, it is the background of Burn's entire cat box. And then there's the 16D layer, which is Heaven, and this is above Burn's cat box because Willard says that Lion is of a lower plane of existence, and the narrator says that Willard's existence is on a different level, and this is the last known quantifiable layer that we can measure, as every layer that's above this is beyond the concept of dimensionality. And add in the fact that the hierarchy of the verse is infinite and never ending, this would make Featherine lowballed high hyperversal all the way to high outer or even boundless, considering how you would interpret her cosmology. This would be including Featherine transcending the infinite hierarchy of the verse, with the first layer already containing things like higher dimensions, transcendental realms beyond everywhere and every time, and even containing alternate possibilities, with each layer after infinitely and dimensionally transcending the previous one and viewing the lower layers as fiction. This isn't including things like the Kakura, which are crystallizations of concepts, like for example different worlds, fates, possibilities, and so on, with there being infinite possibilities, which would mean that Featherine is above all concepts within the verse. She also transcends the City of Books, which is a library that houses infinite books that are said to be their own multiverses, which would have their own infinite amount of concepts, their own infinite hierarchies, and even infinite parallel worlds as well. She's even above the infinite mirror concept, in which two parallel mirrors create an infinite infinite regression, with each mirror holding an infinite hierarchy, meaning one mirror is outerversal and then the next is high outerversal, and so on and so forth. And since Featherine has the power and abilities of a creator, she is beyond the concept of restrictions and has no restrictions whatsoever to her being, like creating things from nothingness and even returning said things to nothingness. And that's pretty much all of Featherine's cosmology and AP stuff covered. So now let's go over her speed next. When it comes to her speed, she can scale from infinite speed all the way to irrelevant. Infinite speed comes from her transcending distance, as when Battler became a Grandmaster, he no longer operated under the standard speed formula, with Featherine scaling above him. Immeasurable and inaccessible speed come from Featherine transcending restrictions and bypassing the speed formula entirely, which also qualifies her for irrelevant speed. And that's really all there is to say about that. So now let's tackle her hacks and abilities. Now when it comes to this, the first thing to talk about is her truth ability. With her truths, she's able to use the red truth, blue truth, and golden truths in combat. With the red truth, she's able to use this conceptual weapon to bypass durability and attack concepts themselves. This weapon can also deny the existence of concepts, and it is stated that using defensive concepts like dodging, blocking, physical barriers, mental isolation, and conceptual inheritance don't work against this, and that regardless of even stamina, when being hit with this attack, the target's stamina does not matter. With the blue truth, this ability makes the target doubt themselves, and in doing so makes them deny their own existence. But unlike the red truth, this ability can be defended and evaded against. Then there's the gold truth, and this is arguably just as powerful as the red truth, however it is very situation dependent. Next is Endless 9, and this is an ability that creates a barrier that can deny anything that the user doesn't believe. Then there's her narrative and plot manipulation, and this allows Featherine to manipulate or create a script in battle that can basically give her an instant win con in many matchups. So now that I've gone over everything, who would win between Xenogoku and Featherine? Let's find out. I'll be honest here, this battle is extremely close, and I mean so close that you can argue either or winning depending on your scaling and interpretation. Both have AP and speed not only comparable to each other, but also pretty much equal, and their hacks and abilities counter each other as well. Because of this, the only way I could possibly discuss who would win would be to put them in hand-to-hand combat, and if this is the case, then Xenogoku takes this. Xenogoku is obviously one of the best hand-to-hand combatants in fiction, and stack this on top of his adaptations and his Super Saiyan transformations, and he could definitely take the win in this matchup. Although it is important to note that since Featherine is omnipotent, she would have knowledge of all martial arts and hand-to-hand combat in Yumi Neko, although she would be at an arguable basic level with them since we don't actually see her use them. But you could argue that with her adaptation and evolution that she could grow to an insane degree to win. If you believe Goku wins, then he'd be the better hand-to-hand combatant, and his adaptation is much greater than Featherine's. And he also has the Key Sword, which can negate regeneration and immortality. But if you believe that Featherine wins, then you could argue her using her principal manipulation to make Goku no longer a Saiyan, or could argue her using her truths on him to erase his entire concept, which, as I said, no form of defense can be used to counter against it. Even her narrative manipulation could also work against him. Or you could use some of Xenogoku's hacks and abilities from the arcade, like Shinryu's Hero's Wish, or the Super Freeze attack, or even Miracle Perfect. Any of those could actually do Featherine in if he's able to somehow get those off. This battle is extremely close and can go so many different ways, but if you were to ask me who would win between these two in an all-out fight, I'd have to go with Featherine, and I hope I was able to prove that. If you know anyone who debates this topic or these characters, then please send them this video, as I'm sure they will have lots to say about it, or they might even enjoy it. Thank you all for watching, and please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoyed the video and would like to see more. I have my DBS Goku versus Featherine and my previous video on screen right now if you would like to check those out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.